I'm going to start us off. So we got USC tomorrow, and if you may or may not know, we are 0-14 all time against USC, which is pretty appalling. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But I want to break down last week's game against ASU. Not gonna lie, I watched only about 3/4 of it and kind of turned it off because they really weren't worth watching after third quarter. That being said, first I want to touch on some positives as I pull up the game stats. One thing I like was the final drive of the first half and then the first drive of the second half. That final drive of the first half, we looked good. The offense looked okay, and we were moving the ball a little bit, and the offense seemed to flow a lot better than it had been in the past two games. And while it only ended up being 3 points, it was points on the board. It snapped that scoring drought that we were going through, which is pretty terrible if you ask. Which is in all honesty. But Lewis looked good. The offense looked good, and I was like, okay, this is what the offense should look like. And then they came out in the second half and had that nice sustained, 4 to 5 minute drive where they put a touchdown on the board, and I was like, wow, like if that's the kind of offense that they can play consistently with for 4 quarters of football, they're going to put a lot of points on the board. So I was really pleased to see of that, and I also liked, while the defense did give up 35, again, I'm going to attribute a lot of that to A, the offense not putting a lot of points on the board, and B, really, really just them being on the field for too much time. I think when it comes down to it, and I know Kieran and I have stressed this over the past couple of weeks, is that if your defense on the field for 3/4 of that game, you're going to give up 35-plus points. It's just the way it is. It doesn't matter how good our defense is, which it's a really good unit. And we've talked about that consistently, and we've always said that this is the defense that, paired with a productive, efficient offense, can really shine. Right now, that's not happening, and the issue is when that's not happening, this defense gives up 35 points like they did against ASU, and it basically makes this defense look, I don't want to say worse than it actually is, but it is true. It makes this defense look like it's not as good as it is because this and as I'll get to tomorrow, I think this defense has a really good opportunity to finally prove itself no matter what the offense does. For example, while I quickly look at these stats on defense, again, I've talked about this man all through last year, and I'll continue to talk about this man for the rest of this season. Nate Lammon has to be one of the most underrated, under-the-radar players in college football. Recorded 10 total sacks in that ASU game, 8 solo sacks. He leads college football with 30 solo sacks, I believe. That's incredible. Again, a guy like Christian Gonzalez, Mekhi Blackman, both recorded 7 and 6 sacks respectively. They've been playing great. The secondary really has shown flashes and in all honesty, consistent flashes of them being able to stop the passing game and even be productive on run plays. I think it's a secondary is so much taken granted for in a run game because it is such a crucial aspect. Same thing on the other side, and having capable blocking wide receivers. That's huge in a run game, which I don't think we've seen out of this offense, which I'm not going to attribute the lack, therefore, of this productive run game, but it would be nice. I mean, there really isn't much more to say about this ASU game. Was I expecting a little bit more? Yes. Was I pleased to see that at times this offense looked as capable as I think it can be, especially that first drive in the second half? Like, look, if that offense could find some way to replicate what they did that first drive of the second half. This offense can become productive and this offense can become good and therefore make teams kind of rethink their defensive scheme against this offense because right now this offense is just so predictable. They know Lewis can't throw the ball more than 20 yards downfield, which means they know that this offense is very run heavy, which is fine. They're very run heavy last year and it worked. That just didn't. It's just not working right now, and I don't know why. And I'm not some like football expert, but it's a little frustrating to watch. Again, I mean, props to this defense for holding it as close as they did for the longest time. Oh, the one person I do want to point out is the kicker, Josh Watts. He's been having one heck of a season. In that ASU game, I mean, he had 6 punts. He punted for 287 yards. He averaged almost 48 yards of a punt. His longest was 55. I mean, he's been doing that all season. And for a team that punts so many times in a game, it really becomes crucial that a punter is as good as he is. And thankfully, he's on our team. Unfortunately, he's on the field just as much of that offense. But I think in the long run, it'll pay off that he's there. Trying to think who else. The kicker, Cole Becker, who's had a very rough season as a freshman. But he went 2 for 3 and he kicked a 51-yard field goal, which was pretty good. So that was pretty impressive as well. But yeah, I mean, there was maybe 1 or 2 good things about that ASU game, and I really don't want to hang on to that one for much longer because what's really important is this game tomorrow. As I said in the beginning of this show, CU is 0-14 against USC all time. That is atrocious. It just simply is bad. I was at the game 2 years ago when we were leading in 2019, when we led the whole entire game, and then much like the A&M game, one last drive for USC really put the nail in the coffin in that game for CU. But I think this year, this is the game, this is the type of game, the type of matchup that I feel like, it's 2 teams that had much higher expectations than they're currently at. USC is 2-2. They fired Clay Helton, which was, if you ask anybody in not only the Pac-12, but anybody in college football, was a very much a long overdue firing. Slovis has not been as good as he has been, albeit he was injured last week, but he's thrown for 842 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. For a guy who was billed as a prospective Heisman candidate, a top 10 Heisman candidate, he really hasn't been all that great. What makes USC really, really good, it most definitely is their wide receiving core. The likes of Drake London and trying to think who else, but and we'll see tomorrow that the wide receiving core is really what makes that team really, really good. And I think looking forward to tomorrow, I think the secondary gets its really first big test. I think the A&M game we build to be that big test, but then their starting quarterback went down, and essentially that passing game until that last drive was really out of the question. And I think our secondary wasn't as tested as I think we all thought it was going to be. Tomorrow, especially, will be that big test against a very strong veteran receiving core against our very young but talented secondary. And I think the secondary has a chance to really prove that for the next 2 to 3 years that this could be one of the best units in the Pac-12. I think it's getting overshadowed by the likes of a very non-existent offense that we have, but it's got its possibilities. Also tomorrow, we have the return of Mustafa Johnson. If you guys haven't heard, last year he declared for the draft, went undrafted, didn't sign an agent, decided to come back to CU, I think possibly like a week before the start of the season against UNC, was granted permission to come back and play, but he had to wait until week 4, which we're in week 4? We're in week 5. Week 5 against USC, which in the eyes of Colorado is always a big game. No matter if we're 1-3 and they're 2-2, the fact that we haven't beaten them and all the time we've been in the Pac-12 is still a big deal, and it will continue to be a big deal until we beat them. I think for me tomorrow, and tomorrow I'll be luckily I'll have the opportunity to be in the press box covering the game for the newspaper I write for. So it'll definitely be interesting to look at this game from a different perspective rather than just being a screaming fan. I'll actually be a guy in the press really trying to analyze what I see in that game. I really want to see this offense be efficient, be as efficient as they were in that drive to begin the second half of the ASU game. I think that's the most confident I've seen the coaching staff in Lewis in the rest of the offense, and the offense in Lewis. They were moving the ball really well. The run game was working with both Fontenot and Jared Broussard. I think we got to get out of our heads that there's a 1-2 running back. No, when you have guys like Fontenot and Broussard who can be two of the best running backs in the Pac-12, you don't 1 and 2 them. You very much bounce off each other. If Fontenot has the hot legs, run with Fontenot. But if Broussard gets that, go with Broussard. It's a very problem to have two very capable running backs who can put up well over 100 to 200 yards a game if that offense is efficient. I'd also like to see Lewis to start settling in, throwing in between that 10 and 20 yard mark, because they could still be productive offense even without him throwing down the field. What I don't like are these 5 to 6 yard slants that they love to run. We saw it so much in the A&M game. We saw it. I mean, obviously it worked in the UNC game because UNC was just not as – it's an FCS opponent. You're expected to put up points on the board. But we saw it in that A&M game, and while it worked, it just didn't move the ball as efficiently as it can be. In the Minnesota game, it was just non-existent. And then in the Arizona State game, it just kind of worked but didn't work. But I'd love to see this offensive scheme really focus on that run game and that run-pass option, because Lewis' best abilities and his best strength is his legs. And his second best strength is his arm. You know, he is a quarterback. He's expected to throw the ball, and he has the ability to throw the ball. I really think he does. And that RPO could be so good for this offense. Instill the confidence in Lewis that he has enough talent to make those decisions. That if he sees the run, let him hand it off. But if he sees the option to either pass it or use his legs, let him do it, because he has the ability to be a productive quarterback, only throwing 10 to 20 yards downfield, complementing that with his ability to use his legs to extend plays. In that touchdown drive, especially in that A&M game, half of that, 3/4 of that drive was him extending the plays with his legs. We've seen what he can do. In that Texas game last year when he came in, and that really was no contest, again, he showed the ability to use his legs. So I'd love for this offensive scheme to really, kind of use a mix of both. Really try to incorporate that run game into a run-pass option. That's the best way that this offense has the ability to put up points. So, I mean, I really hope tomorrow's game is competitive. I think they owe it to the fans. I think they owe it to themselves. I think that, and me and Kieran have stressed this so much over the past couple episodes and the past couple of weeks, is that this team is so much more capable than what they're showing on the field. It's true. It really is true. But I just think that this either it's the coaching staff, or like I said, it's Lewis's inexperience, the experience of the offense as a whole. Once it clicks, and we saw it partially click again in that first drive of the second half of that ASU game, what this offense can do. This, like I said, and I will continue to repeat this, and I sound like a freaking broken record. This offense has the ability to be productive and put a lot of points on the board. They have plenty of playmakers: Fontenot, Broussard, Rice, Stanley, Arias. Brendan Lewis can be a great playmaker and a great efficient playmaker for not only for the Buffs, but be one of the best playmakers and efficient playmakers in the Pac-12. He's just not there yet, and it may not be this season, but next season when he's had a full year of game experience and a full year in that Darrell playbook, and he gets better and he gets stronger and he gets more experience. Year 3 and year 4 are going to be his best years. I don't doubt about it. It's just about getting him the experience. You still have time for it to click this season, but if it doesn't, don't stress about it. I think in the broader terms, this CU fan base needs to have patience with this team as a whole. We're only in year 2 under Darrell's offense and under Darrell's coaching staff. We saw what it can do last year, and if you want to say last year was a fluke, so be it. I'm not the type of person who says that. I think last year truly showed the abilities that this offense and defense can have. We were one of the best run-stopping defenses in the league last year. In all of college football, we had a guy who almost rushed for 1,000 yards last year in 6 games. I mean, that kind of production just doesn't go away like that. And I think that it's the age and the experience of this team as a whole. Give it 2 years. When this offense especially is all juniors and seniors, when that secondary is all juniors and seniors, and that defensive line and that linebacker core is all juniors and seniors, this team is going to be good. You just have to be patient with it. That's really all I have to say about that. I do want to briefly touch upon the fact, and I know we still have a ways away to go, but basketball season is almost here, and if you haven't been a big follower of CU basketball, they've been arguably the most successful program in my years, in my 2.5 years, almost 2.5 years at being at CU. My freshman year, 2019-2020, when we still had Tyler Bay, great team to watch, exciting, great talent. And this past year, obviously they went to the March Madness. They beat Georgetown in a game that many thought Georgetown was going to beat us. Absolutely blew them out of the water, and then lost to a much better Florida State team. And now the departure not only of Bay 2 years ago, but McKinley Wright last year, who will go down as one of the greatest CU Buff basketball players of all time. This team is still poised to be a top contender in the Pac-12. If you haven't been that well educated on CU basketball, Tad Boyle, who I think is a fantastic coach, just recently, this past year, had his best ever recruiting class being a coach. Number 1 in the Pac-12. Top 15 in the nation. In a school, when you think of CU, you don't think of a basketball school. Oh, no. You think, it's a football school, because back in the 90s, we were so good. It was us in Nebraska and Oklahoma. The narrative changed. I think we're definitely for the current time, we're definitely a basketball school. We still have the likes. We have the heart of the team in Evan Batty, a guy who plays basketball with more heart and more passion than any college or NBA player I've ever seen. In my opinion, the best 3-and-D guy in the Pac-12, Eli Parquet, proved that he's the best defender in the Pac-12 last year. I mean, guys got Kawhi level clamps. It's insane to watch him play basketball. I think we're finally going to see Keyshawn Bartholomew finally sprout. Because the past 2 years, he'd been touted as this guy to replace McKinley once he leaves, but we never really got to see his full potential just because of how good McKinley Wright was. Because the attention he demanded when he was on the floor. CU's definitely going to lose some of that aspect of what McKinley brought to this basketball team. And I think it's not there yet. But much like Lewis, he's young. He has raw talent. He showed it last year in those spurts when he would run the offense when McKinley would get a rest on the bench, that he has the ability to really change the outcome of a game with his shooting ability, with his passing ability. I think he could be a much better shooter than McKinley can. No one. I don't think anyone's going to be a better facilitator and a game manager than McKinley can. He was just incredible. I mean, he'd rack up 10 plus assists a game, and you don't see that much in college basketball anymore. McKinley was a special kid. There's no doubt about it. But he really has the ability and the opportunity presented in front of him to really be that guy that CU needs now to step up and be that leader of the team. There's no doubt that Evan Batty is that emotional captain, but he doesn't play point guard. Key plays point guard, and he's going to start games now. He's the number one guy that CU has to look for that offensive production. And then obviously there's the likes of Jabari Walker, who just tore it up last year in his freshman year. I mean, a guy is tall, lanky. He adds so much length to a team that last year really lacked, but now this year they don't. And he's just a guy who can pull up, a big guy who can pull up from three, but also work the post, work the mid-range, can be great on defense. A guy like Tristan Da Silva, who proved that he can be a really dependable guy last year. I love to see more of Luke O'Brien or Nick Clifford, just guys who got a lot of playing time last year, which was super important. Now that a guy like McKinley's gone and a guy like Deshaun Schwartz is gone, Dallas Walton's gone, that holes that were taken by those three guys now need to be filled with the likes of Key and Jabari and Tristan Da Silva. On top of the fact that this freshman class is insane. Sure, they're going to be raw. Sure, they're going to make mistakes like any freshman does. But when you bring in a 7-1 center like Lawson Lovering, who's going to be an absolute dominant guy in the paint on both on defense and on offense, I think something that we could have had with Dallas Walton if he wasn't battled with all those injuries, that if Lawson could stay healthy, could be such a dominant presence in the paint. And then we got KJ Simpson or Quincy Allen, two great guards who can really step in the same capacity, kind of what Key has been in the past 2 years, but maybe even more, maybe even in a more prominent setting. That this team is, while it's got a really good mix of veterans in Parquet and Batty to really show what it's like to play at the college level. Tad really injected this team with a lot of youth, and you can call me crazy all you want, but this team really remains one of the top teams to beat in the Pac-12. Sure, you have the likes of Oregon and USC, and Arizona's always good. It's always a perennial basketball powerhouse in the Pac-12. But I think the past 2 years have really shown that Colorado has created such a great basketball culture that now Tad has the ability to rake in these 4- and 5-star prospects and have a top 15 recruiting class in the nation. I mean, that's insane. It really is good for the brand. And if you look forward to 2022, already got one of the top-ranked centers in the United States out of Minnesota to commit. A great 4-star guard just committed it for the 2022 class. So Tad is building something special. And I think so many people hate on a basketball program that really was pretty mediocre through the 2000s and then early the 2010s when they joined the Pac-12 and had really good success in 2012 and then kind of died down. But in 2018 and 2019 definitely showed that they had the potential to be a really good team, not only in the Pac-12 but in the nation. And last year they were consistently top 25 in KenPom. And if you know what KenPom is, essentially it's a basketball metric that combines both like offensive production, defensive production, all that kind of stuff into one, and really just kind of ranks teams outside of the AP poll and the coaches poll into a much more statistical ranking. And CU was consistently, I don't think it was ever below 25 all year, which is insane. So this basketball program is really something to be excited about in a time when a football program is really in the middle of trying to find itself. That it's nice to rely on a team that can give fans hope. And I really hope that this basketball team starts getting the fan support that is deserved. It's so unfortunate that we didn't get to see McKinley Wright play his last year at CU this past year. It really is. But I'm so excited to watch what Tad's got going in that basketball team because I really think he's got something special. Like I said, he's got that great group of veterans and he's got that great injection of youth. And put that together is such a dangerous basketball team. So I'm really excited to watch. Got some great games on the schedule. We're hosting Kansas at home, which is going to be insane because Kansas is always a perennial basketball powerhouse school. I know for sure I'll be in that game screaming my head off. So I could not be more excited. But right now, my main focus is on basketball season. I'm excited to watch the Buffs play tomorrow. No matter what happens, I'm excited to see what Darrell rolls out on that field tomorrow. Win or lose, I'll always be supportive of my Buffs. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, as always, thank you guys so much for coming out and watching the episode, supporting Kieran and I, even though Kieran wasn't here today. We really appreciate all the support you guys give us. It really just is a great stream of support for us. Follow Kieran and I on Twitter. Tomorrow I'll most likely be live tweeting during that USC game. So if you want to see me overreact to plays and that kind of stuff, definitely go ahead and follow me on Twitter. But other than that, I will see you all next Friday. Even though it's a bye week, we'll still have a show, break down USC, look at some other big games in the college football world.